The hybrid smartwatch I'm wearing right now is one of the prestigious designs from the Swedish watch brand Kronaby. But there's some absolutely shocking things about this watch that you might want to know before you buy. And also one incredible feature. Welcome back to another episode of Stu's Reviews. Before we begin, if you enjoyed today's episode and find the information useful, I'd really appreciate it if you return the favour and hit that thumbs up, subscribe and notification bell. But on to the Kronaby. Now nearly everyone these days has a smartwatch in some form or another. But what about those who don't want another screen about their persons? Well, that's where hybrid smartwatch brands like Kronaby come in. Now the reason I'm doing this episode is because I've wanted a Kronaby watch for ages, and Facebook was doing its job and serving me all the ads about them. So around 6 months ago I decided to take the plunge. Let me show you what I got. This is the Kronaby Seco. It looks just like any normal watch. It has a leather band, stainless steel enclosure, sapphire crystal face, 3 chronograph style buttons, and is water resistant to a depth of 100 meters, but this watch is far from normal. Hiding beneath its 41mm face is a ton of neat tech. Firstly, it features Bluetooth 5.0 to connect to your phone to allow notifications to be sent through the built-in vibration motor. It also has an accelerometer to track your step count, and its hands can move independently to display information in simplified form. You can do things like decline calls, control your music, and even remotely trigger your shutter using the buttons, and much, much more, which we'll look at very shortly. But all of this comes with an inbuilt battery life of 2 years, and is replaceable with a standard watch battery when that one runs out. Now before we take a deep dive into this model and some of the incredible smart functionality, let me get some elephants out of the room and give you some information about the company and a watch that might shock you a little bit. I know it did with me, and I've certainly burst open some truths that I wish I knew before buying it. Now when you see an advert pop up, you always see the tagline Kronaby Sweden. When buying a Kronaby watch online, the website is branded Kronaby Sweden, and when it arrives they even send you a little watch back as if you've been to an actual shop. Look, like this. And look, it even says Kronaby Sweden. Now there's a pretty shocking truth behind this, because Kronaby watches aren't in fact Swedish, or at least not anymore. Originally, Kronaby was owned by its Swedish parent company, Anima AB, which unfortunately went bankrupt. Then in 2019, Anima and Kronaby were bought out by another company called Festina, who are the current owners of Kronaby the brand. Now why is this important? It's important because Festina aren't Swedish and are in fact headquartered in Spain, which is where the majority of Kronaby operations now reside. And even when ordering from Kronaby.com, guess where my watch shipped from? Barcelona. What's even more interesting is that the majority of the parts are manufactured in China according to the website calibercorner.com, although this isn't specified anywhere on the Kronaby website as far as I'm aware. So really, the fact that it's still labelled as Kronaby Sweden is a little bit of a porcupine. Kronaby Spain is much more of an accurate representation of the brand in its current situation. So does this matter in the grand scheme of things? No, not really. But at the very least, I do think it's a bit misleading. If it was Kronaby Spain, would that affect sales? Possibly. I don't think Spain is known for its particularly prestigious watches, so it might put people off. But the million-dollar question is, should all this put people off buying one? Absolutely not, because this smartwatch has some incredible features and one absolutely killer feature. But let's start with the tech inside this. For a hybrid smartwatch, it's certainly more on the simple side. Many hybrid models tend to have some form of small screen or other tech that makes it noticeably smart when on the wrist. Well, this is one way Kronaby stands out from the crowd a bit, because from every single angle, this thing looks like a regular watch, and I love it. I've always said I love traditional timepieces, and this really does have that perfectly traditional look without compromise. Now the hands on the watch act as a rudimentary display, turning to certain positions on the dial to signify different things happening on your phone and other events throughout the day. Specifically, what they can display can be customized in the app, so let's take a look at that. Now the app is almost as simplistic as the watch itself. To customize what can be displayed on the watch, we can tap on the watch face and then choose from 9 different pieces of information such as second time, stopwatch, temperature. This displays when you tap on the large crown on the side of the watch, and you can choose to have different pieces of information displayed when you double press the crown. With notifications, again, this is displayed by selecting what you want the hands to turn to in the app. There are a few limitations here. You can only choose 4 notifications for the 3 handsets that give you different vibrations. You can choose all calls, all texts, or even filtered calls for specific people. But for other apps it's more limited, having to choose which app you want to set as which type of notification. So with a limit of 16 possible choices, it means you might have to be a lot pickier about the type of notifications you want on the watch. Now with the vast amount of stuff the hands can do in response to what you want, it can get a little confusing. But as it is, I still love being able to see your notifications displayed on a mechanical dial through this method. Now this is pretty cool. But if we move on down to the pushers section, this is where things get really cool. In here, you can choose what you would like to do with the other buttons on the watch. Find your phone, record your location, or trigger your camera. These, to be honest, you can find on almost any smartwatch these days. But there's one thing on here that I've never seen implemented into a physical button on a smartwatch, and the killer feature that this watch has, and that is IFTTT integration through one of the physical buttons. This opens up a huge world of opportunity, and you can set up to 3 IFTTT triggers through a single press, a double press, or a triple press of the button. Now this means that when I press the button once on my wrist, it boils the bloody kettle. I press it twice and it plays music from the speakers in my study. I press it 3 times and it arms all of the security cameras in my house and turns off most of the lights. But that's just how I've got it set up. With IFT integration, it's such a ridiculously powerful tool, it's unbelievable. And because it's baked directly into the physical hardware of the button, it makes it super fast to trigger without faffing around, raising your hand, messing around with a cramped 1-inch screen, and then finding the routine you want to run. And speaking of routines, because you can pair up IFTTT to Amazon Echo, you can then trigger full Echo routines with a single button press. This whole physical button feature is very similar to the flick buttons I reviewed a few months back. Those things are incredible, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check those out. But Chronoby Watches essentially gives us the same function of a physical button shrunk right down and placed on the wrist. And I cannot stress enough how much I love this feature and how much I wish other smartwatch makers would do something similar and allow greater control of the physical buttons on the device. And this, I think, makes the Chronoby, in my eyes, a perfect smartwatch for the modern smart home enthusiast and integrates extremely well into most existing setups. And to give Chronoby credit where it's due, the whole experience has been extremely stable. But that doesn't mean that I haven't found something that I think could be improved. To be completely honest, there's only 2 things that I would want to see in the future from Chronoby. The first is fitness tracking. Now, as it is, it only records your steps, and it can sync those to your native health app on your phone. But I would love to see more options record specific activities or have the ability to partner your phone with GPS, because I've found that steps alone, the algorithm they're using, can be a little bit overgenerous. But it would be nice to see sleep tracking as well as part of this. And although I know it wouldn't be as accurate as potentially other options on the market with heart rate sensors and other types of sensors, it could still give you a rudimentary form of sleep tracking via its sensors that are built into it already. Now, the second thing I want to see from Kronaby in the future is some form of mobile payment integration. Now, interestingly, Kronaby brought out a retrofit option in the form of a watch strap with built-in NFC that could be used as a payment method in the UK. But that seems to have disappeared completely and is out of stock on all the websites it's mentioned on. And it's not on theirs at all, so I'm not sure really what happened to that. But it would be great to see it come back at some point, and it may even make me upgrade from this particular model. And those, unbelievably, are the only two things that I could find to criticise about the whole experience. However, there is perhaps just one other thing, and that's the cost. The cost of a Kronaby watch massively varies dependent on the style that you choose, and there's a hell of a lot of choice in both masculine and feminine designs. The cheapest possible option is €245, which is actually the Seckle range which I'm wearing right now. Now this equates to about £200, which I think is pretty reasonable, but that's not the average price of a Kronaby watch. Most of them sit between €400 and €500, making that around £300 to £400, maybe even a little bit more. And that's a bit on the pricey side if you ask me. I'm not sure a watch with a quartz movement and very limited smartwatch functionality, despite the killer integration on the IFTT buttons, is worth quite that much. £200 I was more than happy to pay for this piece. £250 I think that I wouldn't have complained, but £350? £450? Yeah, that's too rich for my blood in this particular brand. But then they do offer a style for everybody, so although I wouldn't pay that much, I can see that some would be quite happy to pay a little bit more to get the style that they want. So what are my final thoughts on the Kronaby smartwatch? Well, despite the slight porkies about Sweden, and if we ignore some of the more expensive models and look at the price that I paid for this Sequel, this absolutely takes the crown from my previous favourite hybrid smartwatch by NYSW that I did a review of about 2 years ago. It really is a bare bones experience, which is exactly what I want from a hybrid smartwatch. And although it might not be as smart as other smartwatches, it manages to do something that even the top of the range ones can't do, and that's create a physical interface with your smart life through the physical buttons on the watch and IFTTT. So this thing gets my thumbs up for the best hybrid smartwatch that I have ever tried. And that concludes today's review. Guys, if you enjoyed today's episode and found the information useful, I'd really appreciate you hitting that thumbs up, subscribe and notification bell for more Stu's reviews, and I'll see you back in another episode soon. Fitness tracking. Now, as it is, it only records your steps and it can sync those to your native health app on your phone. But I would love to see more options record